Shalom. Giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Baha Shem, Yahweh Shai, Baha Shem Rachah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and wherever you may be, and wherever you may be. To you I say Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. All right, I want to share a few things here. It was actually some things I was looking to late last night. A bunch of different things, and of course, we don't have the same pages. I lost my pages there of all the things that I asked it, but it was very interesting because we probably all know by now about the Iranians now charging $1 per barrel, all right, for ships carrying oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's supposed to be around the ceasefire time, and all these different things happening. Okay, so and then I saw an article where it mentions um, that I forget what they call it, but we'll read into it anyways. Oh, here it is right here. Um, yeah, it says the East-West Oil Pipeline. All right, this is also known as Petroline or Petroline. All right, so this was struck. Okay, and so I was asking the questions about both events. Iran and charging the cryptocurrency for payment in the oil passages. All right, and then I asked it about you know the Saudi Arabia situation too. So I have it re-pulled up, but like I said, it's not as deep and you know as thorough as the first time when I was looking through it. But I found all this stuff very interesting here. So pretty much, well, this is the first thing about the Saudi Arabia East West oil pipeline. Right, it was struck by Iranian drones, I believe it was. So it says the East West oil pipeline, also known as Petroline, was struck by a drone attack on Wednesday, April 8, 2026. The strike hit a pumping station along the 1,200-kilometer route at approximately 1 o'clock p.m. local time. This pipeline has become a critical economic lifeline as it allows the kingdom to bypass the largely closed Strait of Hormuz by transporting oil from eastern fields to the Red Sea port of Yanbu, so impacting casualties or operational loss. It says the attack reduced throughput on the pipeline by approximately 700,000 barrels per day. Okay, the BPD. All right, and casualties. I don't really care about the casualties. So production cuts. It says in addition to the pipeline, hits on the Manifa and Kurais oil fields further slash Saudi production capacity by a combined 600,000 BPD or barrels per day. All right, so the context of the attack. The strike occurred just hours after a 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran was announced on Tuesday evening. Despite the truce, multiple regional targets in Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE were also reportedly targeted by Iranian origin drones and missiles. Right? So it says while the damage to the pipeline infrastructure was initially described as limited, the disruption comes at a time when the route was operating at near full capacity of 7 million BPD to maintain global supply during the ongoing regional conflict. Right? So basically, you know, um, guess to say that the Hormuz Strait was not affecting them, as widely as other places. But anyways, it says loadings at the port of Yanbu were reported to have continued without immediate interruption following the incident. Okay, so all right, so and this is what we mentioned before. Iran only accepted cryptocurrency. So as of Friday, April 10th, 2026, Iran has reportedly begun demanding transit tolls in cryptocurrency or Chinese yuan for oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz. While not the only accepted currency for all trade, this move specifically targets maritime traffic to bypass Western financial systems and sanctions. Okay, which rings a bell with the BRICS in general. All right, because the BRICS nations pretty much formed to get around, or at least start trying to work to form a way around the American dollar. Now, the interesting thing here is with Iran. I forget. I'm not sure if it'll be here. It's probably not. Like I said, there was a lot of information that I read yesterday, but one of these, this bank, there's one particular bank that Iran has their digital assets in, which is a Chinese bank. Okay, all right, and so we all know about the CBDCs. Okay, so I thought that was very interesting there, because there was they also mentioned about accepting the Chinese yuan, okay, as a payment. All right, but then you have this thing popping up about the crypto, all right, currency as a payment. Okay, and I thought it was very interesting because these Iranian cryptocurrencies pretty much are held by a Chinese, I guess you could call it digital bank, if you will. But anyways, it says Strait of Hormuz crypto tolls mandatory fee. Tankers are reportedly being charged a toll equivalent to $1 per barrel of oil on board. Okay, and that basically makes them a lot of money. Um, we're not gonna look it up. It's not really important, but you know, maybe you could do it if you like. But um, to find out just how many barrels of oil that one of these tankers can carry. Okay, and that's a lot of money, right? Even because you might think, well, $1 a barrel, that's nothing. But then when you think about how many barrels that these ships can hold, that's a lot of money, right? And it's very interesting here. I think it's somewhere down here in this, these sections down here. But I think they had a quote from Trump talking about they better not be charging, da 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 da. If they are, they better stop it. The funny thing is, though, but you also said, well, if anyone's going to control the strait, why, well, shouldn't it be us? And and we know how devilish and greedy Babylon is, right? Where Iran is charging $1 per barrel, America will probably, charge $3 a barrel, $4 a barrel. Okay, but anyways, it says accepted denominations. Payments are primarily accepted in Bitcoin, BTC, USDT, or Tether, or the Chinese yuan, the CNY. Right? Operational process ships are required to email cargo details to Iranian authorities. Once assessed, they are given a deadline of seconds to settle the fee in crypto to prevent the funds from being intercepted or traced by regulators. Because the thing is, once the transaction goes through, there is no reversing it. Right? It's clear. It's sent through, so no one can intercept. Right? Once it goes through, it's going through. All right? It's in there. Crypto, digital, whatever bank account. All right. So there's no interception. There's no, you know, and unlike you know, digital currency is not the same as a paper currency. Okay. So and as I always say, is what is just a bunch of ones and zeros in a computer screen. All right. Um. So yeah, it says they have a deadline of seconds to settle the fee in crypto to prevent the funds from being intercepted or traced by regulators. All right, so you can't trace it either. So it's almost like a digital Swiss account. All right. Estimated revenue with approximately 21 million barrels of oil passing through the strait daily. This system could generate up to $20 million per day in crypto revenue for the state. So that's a lot of money, all right? Because that's what these nations are about, anyways, money. Okay. Well, it makes me think about Habakkuk chapter 2, where it mentions the one to that word thick clay, the heavy debt, okay, like Batya, okay, which America ultimately, well, it's really not even America themselves, but just to generalize it, they're gonna eventually flip the switch, all right, to digital, all right. It's gonna happen somewhere. We could be, you know, very possibly witnessing a digital trickle down effect, okay, because prices are, well, gas is the main thing. It's also the first thing that went up. Okay. But then another also important thing is farmers, all right? Farmers can't farm if they don't have the necessary things that they need to farm to plant the crops for the harvest or whatever. Okay. So that assists um, you know, I don't want to say a famine exactly, but just to, put it in words, that would assist, we'll say a shortage of food, all right, which would, over time result in a famine, okay? It actually makes me think about, and it's very interesting too, because I just watched this the other night. It makes me think about the Avengers movie, the Infinity War, where Thanos he killed all the people. So what he was, well, not all the people in this particular planet. All right, where the green girl was from, Gamora, I think her name was. I think she's green. But anyways, so he was saying that there were a lot of hungry people, a lot of mouths to feed, but there wasn't enough resources, wasn't enough food. So he killed off half the population, and after that, they flourished. Okay, everybody was fine, everybody was happy, and he said that that was pretty much justice and so on and so forth. All right, and it's somewhat kind of how Esau is thinking. All right, he wants to weaponize, all right, your money and your food against you because you need those two things, to survive. Well, if he wasn't charging for everything, all right, because he was given the dew from heaven above and the fatness of the earth, so he has all the resources. Okay, you want to build on American, soil anywhere, hey, have it. But if the government finds out, they're gonna remove you from that area. Okay, they might even charge and fine you. Okay, because you're not able to own anything without them saying so, which means that you have to purchase it from them. And ultimately, you still don't own it because if the government could come in and take something that you own, you don't own it. You only rent it you only rent it under the illusion of ownership. All right, and that's the thing that a lot of American people don't understand. All right, the government can come and take the things they have executive orders where they can do that. Okay, they come and take the necessary things that they want to take from you. Okay, so it says the Iranian parliament codified the system under the Strait of Hormuz management plan. Let me see here. I'm gonna need to read all of this. Sanctions evasions. Reports from the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg highlight that Iran is leveraging blockchain technology. See, look, blockchain. We talked about blockchain many times. All right. Um, it's basically going back to what they said here, where it was. Yeah, it can't be traced by regulators. Now, not exactly in the area of it being traced, but no one will have an access. Like if you and I, um, hang out and I'm short. Okay, so I owe you $20. All right, and when I get my funds, I send you that $20. That $20. All right, obviously it's a digital um, trade off that's happening, and so what's created is a block. All right, and that block is a receipt that I made a transaction between, was you and me. I sent you $20, and the only people that have that receipt, that block, are you and me. Okay, and if we do another transaction like that, that is another block that's created, and it's chained to the previous block, somewhat like that, but blockchain. Okay, now if a third person comes in and you do a transaction, all right, with this third party person, there's a new block that's created. I don't have access to that block, and this is not connected to our transactions. Okay, so it's not really complicated. It's just more so understanding how it works. Okay, and so what they're saying is this keeps out hackers and things of that nature, and no one's able to, you know, um, you know, break into this technology here, this blockchain technology, and every transaction is between just that party alone. Whoever was in that party, they're the only ones who have a copy of that receipt, whether it be two people, three people, or whatever. Okay, and if a new block happens and you're not a part of that, you don't have a copy or receipt or access to those records. Okay, so anyways, it says yeah, they highlight that Iran is leveraging blockchain technology specifically because these tokens cannot be easily confiscated under current sanctions. Okay, so U.S. response: President Donald Trump warned Iran on April 10th to stop charging these tolls, stating that it is not the agreement we have, referring to the fragile 2-week ceasefire currently in place. Yeah, that's that I mentioned up above. Okay, but he also said that anyone to control the strait. Why shouldn't we? Wait a minute. So why shouldn't they? Okay, now we're not advocating for any side, but I'm just making a point here. So wider trade uses as an import payment. Since 2022, Iran has allowed local businesses to use cryptocurrency for official import orders, such as cars, as a standard alternative to the US dollar or euro. The Rial proposal. Some Iranian parliamentary committees have recently proposed requiring tolls be have proposed requiring tolls be paid in the national rial. though shipping participants report that crypto remains the primary method for immediate settlement. Okay, and then I'll tell you thing here. How do these two events tie in to one another? All right, so it says these two events represent a coordinated effort to control the flow of energy and financial liquidity as a fragile 2 week ceasefire begins. Okay, and then we talked about what's happening here with this oil and making gas spike up. You have energy crisis happening, um, and then you have things that are also affecting food by way of the farmers, the workers. All right. Even there's a scripture in not Jeremiah, in Measures where it says, "Suddenly the sown places shall appear unsown." Okay, and that's slowly being a problem created here by this Strait of Hormuz situation. All right, where the farmers don't have what they need to farm. Okay, and even before then, you had ICE come in and really kind of kickstarted because they started to pretty much chase away the Northern Kingdom, who were the main free labor work. Well, not really free labor, but a lot of them were working under the table, but who were working right in these fields. All right, these farmers can't do these jobs alone. They got all this, new age equipment and technology and tractors and all these types of things, but still, it's not a job that they can do by yourself. Okay, um, and so they need the help. But with them being afraid that ICE is coming, they stopped showing up to work. So that was really the kickstart. Okay, um, and now here you have the Strait of Hormuz also affecting farmers once again. All right, you even had I think it was in Germany. It was somewhere over there across seas where the farmers had started to block the roads with tractors and stuff like that because they were making complaints about the economy. All right, and because these farmers are very important, right, to the economy, right, because this is the main source of food. Okay, because especially not in Babylon the Great, people are not necessarily fully allowed to grow because you can grow your own food, but I mean like if you were just like I mentioned before, you just want to go out to a big open field in the country and you just want to start whatever, all right, you're gonna find out that either someone owns that land or if not, then the government finds out they'll remove you from there and they might even charge you or even imprison you and still fine you or whatever the case may be. Because you're not free to do what you want to do here. Okay? That's the thing with these American peoples. They don't understand that they're slaves, okay? All right, they're slaves. If you have to pay taxes and you have to have a job, you're a slave. Even if you own your own business, well, you still have to tax something, okay? You still have to look up to someone, and that's the government. All right, so you are still a slave, which you're not a slave to the government itself. You're a slave to the bankers, all right, that run this country. But anyways, uh, these two events represent a coordinated effort to control the flow of energy and financial liquidity as a fragile 2 week ceasefire begins. The strike on the East West pipeline and the Strait of Hormuz crypto tolls work in tandem to eliminate alternatives for oil exporters and maximize revenue for Iran. Now, I'm not saying that that's true, I'm just reading what's here on the screen. But what I was pointing out is it's very interesting how Iran is all of a sudden, charging these crypto tolls. And then you also at the same time had the event, which the Saudi pipeline doesn't have anything to do with the Strait of Hormuz. They were able to still do what they had to do. Okay. But all of a sudden now their pipeline is hit. Okay. Um, so it says the choke and toll strategy. Closing the escape route, the East West pipeline was designed specifically to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. By using drones to strike its pumping stations, the bypass is crippled, forcing oil shipments back toward the strait, which Iran controls. Now, here's the deeper thing that really caught my interest here about this Saudi pipeline. All right, it's supposed to be American owned. All right, and when I look deeper into that, very familiar names came up like BlackRock, um, uh, Johnson family, and there was quite a few names there. All right, but some of these names link back to who? To these elites. Okay, and we know that Saudi is um pretty much they're pretty much somewhat siding with Babylon the Great for now. All right, um because whatever event's going to take place is going to take place. But as of now, they're siding, somewhat with Babylon the Great on those in that side of things. Okay, but there's a reason why. All right, because you have these American assets. Right, you have which you see, no matter how you cut it, it always goes back to the same thing. It goes right back to those banker families. All right, those are the people in the shadow. Those are the people no one ever looks towards because they don't know to look towards. All right, and the few that do, they'll never say it. All right, they always say, "Oh, these globalist elites or the powers that be" and stuff like that. All right, so yeah, I thought that was super interesting there. All right, where digging deeper into that, um, saying that it was American owned. All right, and then seeing some of those companies that popped up, and then asking, well, who owns these companies, and then bam, all right, and then there's the magic button, right? Like, oh wow, okay, I see. Okay, so the point is, these things are more than likely strategically done, and that's why I mentioned what I mentioned before. We may be witnessing, you know, a digital trickle down effect. Like, are they going to try to run with this, starting with this? Because the Strait of Hormuz is affecting everybody. Okay, so is this their way in moving forward with that? It's possible, but they may need a bigger crisis. Anyways, um, enforcing the toll. Once the alternative pipeline is damaged, tankers are left with fewer choices, but to transit. Tankers are left with fewer choices but to transit the Strait of Hormuz. Iran then leverages this dependency by demanding a $1 per barrel toll paid in cryptocurrency or Chinese yuan to bypass Western sanctions. Now, excuse me. Now they claim that this uh, Saudi pipeline is back up and running, but we'll see. It probably is. I'm not sure. Um, but or maybe there's some, maybe it is, but then there's some lasting damage or whatever the case may be. Once again, we have to see where this goes. All right. So it says testing the truth. Both events occurred. See, look, both events occurred just hours after a U.S. Iran ceasefire was announced. Ironic, okay? Ironic that you have Iran forcing crypto payment at the same time that this happened with the Saudi pipeline. All right. So it says, by striking the pipeline and imposing tolls simultaneously, Iran is signaling that even during a truce, it maintains de facto control over global energy prices for and shipping routes, right? Economic and security implications, right? Production versus transit. While the pipeline strike directly reduced Saudi throughput by 700,000 barrels per day, the crypto tolls target the 21 million barrels that typically transit the strait daily, right? So that's that BPD, barrels per day, right? So it says sanctions evasion. The demand for crypto, specifically Bitcoin or USDT, allows Iran to collect millions in revenue that cannot be frozen or intercepted by the U.S. banking system, which we know on that side of the fence you have the SWIFT, okay? And like I said, I don't know if it's in here because I definitely forget the name, but like I said, there was a particular Chinese bank that the Iranians were supposedly using their digital uh, cryptocurrency, whatever, through. All right. Um, so, anyways, it says regional pressure. By targeting infrastructure in Saudi Arabia while charging tolls in the Strait, Iran exerts pressure on both its regional rivals and the global economy to secure a more favorable long term settlement. Right, U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that these tolls violate the ceasefire agreement, stating they better not be charging tolls, and if they are, they better stop now. There's that quote there. You see, but yet you also said that if anyone wants to control it, then why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we control it? Da, 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 da. Okay, and so all these efforts that Babylon is making are all failed efforts because it's not working out like they wanted to. Okay. Now I'll type in how does all these things tie into a CBDC? Because I was trying to pull up the things that I read yesterday because they were very interesting. Um, but of course, you never get the same two answers from the AI thing. But I did my best. This is the recent drone strikes and crypto tolls are practical stress tests for the transition to a central bank digital currency CBDC. Now, I didn't read that yesterday. That was not in what I read yesterday, but that's interesting that it says this. Because we just asked that. Are we going to see a trickle down effect where they're using the Strait of Hormuz to begin the effective use of, you know, digital payments? And is this just going to, is this the starting point, and they're going to start to say, hey, this is better, and start to open it up? Like, yeah, let's just transition here. But at the same time, you know, there may need to be a bigger crisis at hand, which, Hormuz does affect everybody. But how deeply? Now we have an example of that. Look at Cuba. All right, it could go that deep. All right, to where you know your places uh are gonna suffer blackouts, rolling blackouts, or whatever. Right, those people are starving there and things of that nature. That will force you to say, okay, we'll go with the digital. Not saying that these countries are not in line with it anyways, but I'm just making a small point. Let me read that again though. Oh, and look, and I see something else here that we just mentioned. So it says the recent drone strikes and crypto tolls are practical stress tests for the transition to a central bank digital currency, CBDC, and other digital payment systems designed to bypass the US dollar and the SWIFT network. All right. And ultimately, it's really not about that at all. All right. It's ultimately bringing everything to a digital bank and digital currency. But they make it seem like there's opposition, to give it, it's like a stage play. All right. Just to give it some, some oomph. Okay. But the elites are planning on everybody going digital and everybody being microchip. That's ultimately what they want. All right, the decentralized tolls as a CBDC precursor. Iran's new requirement for Bitcoin or stablecoin tolls in the Strait of Hormuz is a proof of concept for sovereign digital payments. Right, speed and finality. Iran demands settlement within seconds to prevent funds from being traced or frozen by Western regulators, as we read up above. CBDC parallel. This mimics the instant settlement of a wholesale CBDC, where transactions occur directly between central banks without needing the SWIFT messaging system. Okay, so it says this mimics the instant settlement of a wholesome CBDC, which that's one of the perks that they claim. All right, it's one of the perks that you make a transaction, it happens immediately. Okay, and if you want to send someone money, okay, um, they could be halfway around the world, they could be in the next city or the next state. Or if you want to send them money, especially if they need it immediately, right? You want to send them money, okay? Um, and that transaction happens immediately, okay? Like you send it, it clears, it arrives, and they're able to access those funds. Versus, for example, where you have like a paycheck. All right, I'm pretty sure a lot of us have done that before. I've done it many times myself. Um, like you have a check, and because I don't like really dealing with the tellers. You know how they have the tubes and the buttons and stuff at top. I don't like dealing with tellers. I do like to do things myself if I have to. But where you'll go to the ATM and you'll deposit your check. Okay, so that check may take 2, possibly even 3 days to clear, especially depending on the size of the check. Where the digital payment, all right, even if it's $3,000, it is going to clear immediately. All right, funds hit the you know hit the account immediately. Okay, and so they're using this as, oh, this is a perk. Okay, immediate access. You can do this, you can do that. All right, so they're basically, you know, conveniencing people to death. Right, that's the key thing they like to throw out there: convenience. So it says this mimics the instant settlement of a wholesale CBDC, where transactions occur directly between central banks without needing the SWIFT messaging system. Okay, so once again, just another way around another American avenue, but ultimately everybody's going digital. All right, that's that Revelation 13. So Project Enbridge, the CBDC superhighway. All right, this is where the other side comes in. All right, you know, it says while Iran uses decentralized crypto, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are already members of Project Enbridge, a multi CBDC platform led by China. All right, so it says the Saudi link, and we've talked about China before. Um, what the heck was it called? The thing was called. Man, I can't even think about what the thing was. Belts and Roads Initiative. All right, they have the Belts and Roads Initiative. They're basically being basically the Chinese America. All right, doing a lot of things and a lot of everywhere. Okay, um, and then they have what is now known as the digital, because there was an ancient, uh, uh, you know, passageway, the Silk Road, and now they have what is the digital Silk Road. China's playing a major part in that. All right, and a lot of other things. I can't remember the video that I did. I might actually want to go back and find it and watch it myself. All right, yeah, I might do that. 'Cause I gotta charge my phone. As I see, my phone is dying. I might want to go find that video and watch it myself. But yeah, so just China being the Chinese America. All right. Um, so yeah, the Project Enbridge. So the Saudi link. Saudi Arabia is a key participant in Enbridge, which has processed over $55 billion in trade as of early 2026. Bypassing the strait as the East-West pipeline serves as an economic lifeline to bypass the Strait of Hormuz physically. Systems like Enbridge allow these nations to bypass the strait financially by settling oil trades in digital yuan or other CBDCs instead of the what? There you go. The petrodollar. All right. The petrodollar. Okay. Once the American dollar is all shot to crap, it's not the end. All right. Once it's fully, crashed out. All right, which is what the elites want anyways. It's not the end. No, it's just the beginning. The beginning of what? Digital payments. See, digital payments. Like quoted from Habakkuk 2, we quoted from Revelation 13 chapter, right? Well, we didn't actually quote the scripture, but no man might buy or sell, say he either had the mark of the beast and the number of his name. Okay, that's what comes next. And how is it going to come about? It's going to come about by chaos, the crashing of this society. Okay, which we see a lot of things getting worse and worse every day in Babylon the Great, anyways. All right, people have not stopped complaining because there's nothing to stop complaining about. See, people are complaining about jobs, either losing jobs or having their jobs but not making enough money to survive. Kicked out, homelessness crisis, food prices, gas prices. Okay, things being shut off. All right, the jacking with the food stamp stuff. Okay, where not only have people um, have had their funds reduced, but now also they're limited to what they can buy with the food stamp funding. So yeah, so this is America poking, what we'll say the higher ups poking these Babylonians, and they're not getting it. Okay, they don't care about you. They only care about achieving their goal, which is this new world order, this new system, this digital system, this microchip, and all these different things. And it's not going to come smoothly. It is going to come by chaos. But that plays into their agenda because they want to what? They want to depopulate. If people start killing one another, that helps them. Okay. The wars that are happening, that helps them because that also helps with depopulation. All right. So they have it all figured out because this is their lot. This is what they were commanded to do on the left hand side. This is what they were made for. And so they're doing things exactly how they're supposed to be doing it. All right, and then they're violent, bloody people, anyways. All right, so it says in Ezekiel, it says, "Thou hast not hated blood; blood shall pursue thee." Okay, so blood is nothing to these people. All right, and giving up a life, right, to achieve their goals is definitely nothing. That's way, way, way beneath them. Okay, so wars contribute to depopulation as well because people die in wars. There's real casualties in wars. All right, chaos and protests and riots. People get injured. People can be put to death behind those things. Those things help with part of their agenda, which is depopulation. Right, but that's another topic though. So yeah, so there you go. It says Enbridge allows these nations to bypass the strait financially by settling oil trades in digital yuan or other CBDCs instead of the petrodollar. So de-dollarization and sanctions evasion. So I didn't expect to see this here. It says both events accelerate the shift toward a fragmented global financial system. Sanctions immunity. Iranian officials noted that digital tokens cannot be easily confiscated. A state backed CBDC would offer even more regulatory sovereignty, allowing countries to trade energy without U.S. oversight. See, you notice how everything keeps going back to without U.S. They're the hammer of the earth. All right, and this place is going to probably go through the worst form of chaos and turmoil. Okay, mentioning Cuba again, something like that. All right, but the Cubans, they wild out a little bit against their government, but they really still weren't fully outraged. All right, because you had people. I saw a video where with lights out and a lack of food, and they were still out there, dancing in the streets in front of a barrel of fire. So you're not really clearly seeing what your situation is. But these Babylonians are a little bit different. Okay, they just need that spark. Okay, these people will go at each other's necks, but that's more so privacy, anyways. All right, the Lord's gonna bring chaos to this place. All right, probably worse than any place on the planet. So it says BRICS integration. India has proposed linking BRICS nations' digital currencies by the 2026 summit to create a direct digital pathway for trade, specifically to manage energy imbalances without the dollar. All right, I don't know how far that's gonna go, but what's this impact summary? Okay, Iran's crypto tolls and CBDC bridge, evading active sanctions, efficient dollar free trade, speed, seconds, deadline based, look instant automatic settlement, asset Bitcoin USDT, asset digital yuan, digital dirham, status active, wartime measure, because that's happening real time, and then status mature, prototype in test phase. See, so they're not quite ready yet, but I have to look into that bridge because between now and last night, the first time I heard about that bridge, I might have to look into that. Is there anything else? Okay, so that was all I typed in there. Yeah. So there's some little very interesting stuff there. Um, it was all stemming from this recent talk about Iran charging crypto payments for oil passages, ship passages, and then I saw the article about a Saudi pipeline was hit, and then I was like, well, how does that tie in with the Strait of Hormuz? Okay, and so like I said, there was a lot of things that I saw last night, but I don't have the same pages here because you can never get the same thing back on the screen. But I think it kind of did the desired effect. Yeah, so yeah, I probably just leave it at that. I probably have that article. I don't know. Yeah, that's the last thing I was looking at. Yeah, see, 9 hours ago, 2 days ago, 8 hours ago, Kuwait reports drone attack causing something something. Yeah, but I'll just probably bring that to an end. So, Lord willing, you will edify to the next thing. I'm trying to say shalom.